Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Think the Better Dealer is Too Far? Thanks for the heads up. This takes place back in 2011 when I was helping my wife shop for a car. We proceed to go to our local Ford dealership on a Saturday and she finds a Focus that she likes very much. It's a higher-end sporty model. I can't remember the exact trim name, but it was very nice. They let us do a 24-hour test drive, and when I was back at my house I looked at the Blue Book, the normal amount that people are paying, and they were about $1,800 higher. $500 of which was the dealer fee. So we'll return the next day. My wife is all excited and in love with the car, and we go to sit down and I say, you guys are $1,800 too high, and without question they took $1,300 off, and I said, is there anything we can do about the dealer fee, because I really don't want to pay it. They said no, the dealer fee is for whatever upkeep of the vehicles. In my mind I'm thinking, if you don't want to upkeep vehicles, don't have a car dealership. We went back and forth and they would firm on not removing the dealer fee, and they said the only place where you don't have to pay a dealer fee is about 40 minutes north of here. So I thanked them for their time and we left. Much to the chagrin of the salesperson, who thought they had a locked-in deal. So we leave the dealership and drive to the one that they mentioned. On the way up, the salesman called me and said that they'll take half off of the dealer fee, and I said, all or no deal. We get to the new dealership and the people in there are wonderful. There is no pressure because the prices are firm on the windows and there is absolutely no dealer fee. We found a car my wife liked, turned out to be a Fusion. The salesperson even went out of their way to dig around and look for rebates that we can get one, including because she has a master's degree, it got us another $500 off, as well as a few others. We buy the car. Monday I get a phone call from the first dealership. They are willing to waive the dealer fee. I informed that night it was too late. We purchase a vehicle at the place they recommended. Folks, always remember who really has the power in the car dealership. Next one is titled, Union Rep Won't Negotiate? Okay. The area that I was born and raised in is not very union friendly. They're not completely anti-union, just definitely not pro-union. This story was related to me by my father and dates back to the 70s or 80s. My father had a friend who owned a mid-sized manufacturing facility and employed 50 to 100 people. He paid above average to all of his employees and, apparently, was a good guy to work for. After several years in business, a new guy gets hired and starts agitating for a union. Sings the siren song of labor to his coworkers. Gets enough support to have a vote. The workers vote to unionize and join a local. The local sends their guy over to negotiate with the owner on the collective bargaining agreement. Owner reads the agreement as provided by the union and walks into the meeting. Union rep says, sign this or we're going on strike. Owner starts to ask a question, but the rep interrupts and repeats, sign this or we go on strike. Owner tries one more time, same interruption and demand. So he shrugs and signs. 2 weeks later, there are a lot of angry union members wanting to know why their paycheck is several $100s smaller. Owner says, I tried to tell your rep that the pay scale in the agreement was worse than what I pay y'all, but he wouldn't let me talk. You'll have to ask him why your paycheck is so small. The union didn't last very long in that shop. Next one is titled, Brand New Number 2 of My Job Publicly Cusses Me Out. I am an 11-year veteran certified nursing assistant in nursing home settings. Due to childcare issues I could only work 4 days a week. But because CNAs are in short supply, I would go into work 2 hours early and help the day shift. They had just hired a brand new head nurse, number 2 of the building directly under the administrator, a 400-pound Garth Brooks looking dude. One day I had just clocked in and was just getting started when the head nurse called me over down the hall. As I'm walking toward him, he begins yelling at me without holding back. Literally sounding like he's trying square up for a fight. Completely surprising and unprofessional to me. He was yelling at me in front of opened resident rooms about how I've been putting my belongings in this back storage room. He then threw my belongings at me. In his fit of unbridled rage of a minor inconvenience at best, he threatened me with, "This bullshit will never happen again." I stared at him for a second and I calmly responded, "You're absolutely right. This will never happen again." As he walked away, I walked straight back to the time clock and punched out for the last time. I shook the administrator's hand for past assistance he had given me and called a nursing home 3 blocks away who hired me on the spot. I had never walked out of a job before that day and only did it as my actual shift didn't start for 2 more hours. Walking out on shift is considered abandonment of residence and a CNA can be barred from caregiving. But as my shift hadn't started, I was technically a no-call, no-show. P.S. The head nurse was fired shortly after over similar situations as my story. Next one is titled, "Think about if you want to be employed here, will do boss." So this is from over a decade ago, but it is the only time I've ever quit a job, and thought y'all might enjoy it. I worked for Target on their overnight team 10 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. And eventually, a specialist position came up, for which I applied and was granted. This was the position of receiver, scheduled to work 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., which basically was the person who would take in vendor orders, i.e., not things that were sent straight from corporate, but instead the Coca-Cola guy, or the Lay's potato chip guy, etc., and specialty orders that came in at times other than the main truck. This was a job where instead of one major task you dealt with about 20 minor ones throughout the day, and your day varied based on the whims of the people who are bringing things in to you. We had a delivery cutoff of 12 p.m., but management would always say just take things no matter when they came. I generally was really good about managing my time, and making sure if I needed to stay late for something important I did, and if it was something minor, say, the Harlequin romance books that could wait overnight to process, I'd get it first thing in the morning. I had a good rapport with my boss, and I got great reviews. Then, my boss got a promotion and my new boss was a piece of shit. The new boss, we can call him John because that was his name, duck you John, was a tyrant of the pettiest type. He'd wonder why things were left overnight, when I wasn't busy earlier in the day when he saw me, because I'd completed all my tasks and I can't make UPS come faster than they do. When Target's corporate told my department it was busy enough for a 20-hour-a-week worker, he refused to let me get anyone for longer than my 30-minute lunch breaks. The straw that broke my back was PFresh. For those of you who didn't work at Target in the early 2000s, PFresh was what they called their new initiative to have groceries in the stores. It was a big deal for them, and my store was one of the pilot stores in our area. I would be the first person to have to deal with it, and then I would have to teach receivers in the area how it works by having them shadow me for a day at my store, and me at theirs when they got their fresh food. The fresh food came in a separate truck, that arrived at 4 a.m. I expected, like I was informed, I would simply have to process it first thing in the morning when I got to work. Instead, John decided that my schedule was going to be changed to 4 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Getting up at 3 a.m. to be at work at 4 a.m. was not fun, but I dealt with it because I was a team player. However, John still insisted I needed all of my work done by the time I left at 12:30 p.m., an impossibility when the cutoff for deliveries was 12 p.m. I still prioritized things as good as I could, and nothing urgent was left undone for more than 24 hours, when Target was pretty good at making sure we had plenty of time to receive things before they had to hit the floor for street dates and such. The straw that broke my back was when the specialist position was terminated. Basically, Target wanted those special positions in the normal chain of command, which is fine. However, when they did this, they also gave lots of power to John. You see, it was in my old position that I had weekends off, because people don't deliver on the weekends, and was not required to work holidays, along with being a guaranteed 40-hour-a-week MF position. When this change came through, HR informed us that we had a week to decide whether we wanted the position or if we wanted to go to another position in the company, or if we wanted severance. HR informed me that nothing would really be changing with my job, because it was still important, whereas other jobs like the jewelry counter weren't considered as important, and were being rolled in with other things. I was going to stay with the position until John brought me into the office later that day. He told me he was tired of my poor attitude involving getting things done, so he was changing my schedule to a split shift. Basically, he wanted me to come in from 4 to 5 a.m., then go home for an hour, then come back at 6 a.m. and work until 1:30 p.m. He also told me that any overtime would no longer be allowed, and that I'd have to start working one weekend a month and holidays. He also wrote me up for something that I did not do, but the person who covered my lunches did, under the guise of me not training them properly. His words were, "You need to think long and hard about how you are working, and think about if you want to be employed here in a month." I told him he was absolutely right. I told him I would be right back. I had to run to the restroom. Instead, I went to HR and told them I'm taking the severance, and as it was 12:25 p.m., I'm guessing this is my last day. I then got to go back to John and tell him what I just said. He told me that I had to come back next week to train my replacement. I walked out of that building happier than I had been in the last 3 years working there. I got texts over the next few months of the fallout. The receiving department was a ducking nightmare for months, and since I was the only one who knew how to handle their refrigerated trucks, they lost an entire truck worth of merchandise that week. That was not a good look for them. Additionally, corporate had to send out people from out of the area to cover all of the training I was supposed to provide, which cost them a lot of money and made corporate even more pissed at John. Last I heard, he had been let go, and the next place he worked fired him for sexual harassment. I had a month's vacation where I got totally prepared for wow, cataclysm, and then I took a new job. I was happy as a clam. Next one is titled, "Get Rid of My Vacation? Have fun replacing me." I originally posted this as a comment on another thread, but realized it needed its own limelight. I worked at a company that gave out exorbitant amounts of vacation. Anyone who worked there for 25 plus years received 8 weeks of vacation and 2 weeks of personal time. This was a family-owned company, but rather large. We ran 3 shifts totaling 250 plus people. Enter Jimmy. Jimmy was a grizzled old man. He started at the company when he was just 20, now he was 63 and gave absolutely zero shits. Jimmy also knew how to make a specific part for our product, him and one other higher up in the office. One day the plant owner comes out and announces he's selling to a corporation. He's older and ready to retire. He promises that there will be very little change and wishes us all well. The new company comes in and immediately goes after many of the great benefits we had. The first thing they do is cut everyone's max vacation down to 4 weeks, and do completely away with personal time. Anyone who's maxed out had until December 31st of that year to use it up, and they wouldn't pay it out. They then go into the office and clean house, firing anyone who's close to retirement, including Jimmy's backup. But they also do away with one very important rule. You no longer have to get vacation approved, you can just call in and take it. Jimmy is pissed, and they know it. They realize he's the only one in the building that can do his job now. So they hire a new kid for him to train, most likely to permanently replace Jimmy. So Jimmy does what anyone would do. He calls in the first training day for the new hire, and lets us know he's going to use all of his PTO at once, and promptly takes 10 weeks off. We had a back stock of parts he had made, so it wasn't too unnerving. But for 10 weeks, Jimmy went and applied to other jobs, found one, and started. Fast forward 10 weeks. It's the day Jimmy is supposed to return. He doesn't. For 2 days they try calling him, and even go to his house. He's nowhere to be found. Finally on day 3 he calls and resigns, and they lose their shit. The parts he makes are specialized and patented by the original founder. You can't just hire someone off the street to make them. What eventually happened was they had to contract the original owner to come in and teach some new hires how to make them, and when he found out what all they had done, it pissed him off. The last I heard, he charged them a 7-figure contract to teach them how to produce the parts, and they had to pony up, or close down. Moral of the story: don't duck with people's vacation time. Edit. Jimmy made an electronic control module that was sealed and stayed fixed in a poured unit made of a 2-part epoxy. Edit number 2. Jimmy didn't exactly miss out on a 7-figure contract and had zero chance to take one. He left, said duck them and moved on. When they contacted the previous owner and explained the situation, it was basically a, "You need my help. It'll cost 1 million" type of conversation. Last one is titled, "Fired for Hair. Restaurant had to close down." When I was in high school, I got a part-time job as a hostess at an Italian restaurant with a friend of mine. The restaurant was only open 5 days a week for dinner. The restaurant was fairly new but was already filling every table every night because the food was amazing. In addition to my friend and I being the only 2 hostesses, the busboys were friends, half of the waiters were friends, and the dishwasher was a friend. The owner's son was the floor manager, and with the success of the restaurant started to implement new changes. Everyone must look presentable and in uniform at all times. No dirty uniforms. Even for the busboy. He was rather rude to all employees and would hover and take over our jobs right in front of customer, apologizing for our inability to do our jobs correctly. However, everyone there was fantastic at their jobs. The dishwasher even found creative ways to stay clean and tidy. The straw broke one night when my friend and I were both working the hostess stand on a packed Saturday night. The manager walked up to us and declared our hair was not compliant with dress code. Both of us had our hair pulled back in the requisite buns. However, we both had a few stray wisps. You know, those tiny little new hairs around your face. Never mind that it was August and it was hot and we were all working as a team like crazy to make sure the night ran smoothly, sharing duties such as bussing tables and running food and drinks, underage. He loudly fired both of us on the spot in front of the entire restaurant and front staff. He then said we were required to continue to work for 2 weeks and train our replacements. I asked, "Are we fired?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Firing means we don't work for you anymore." We walked out, punched our cards and went to change out of our uniforms. When we got out of the dressing room, there was a line of people waiting to change, including the busboys, half the waitstaff, and the dishwasher. All were so mad about what had happened that they quit on the spot. No one liked the job anyway. We all went to IHOP to eat and were soon joined by the rest of the waitstaff and the line cooks. So all that was left of the entire restaurant staff was the bartender, the owner, cook and the manager. I later heard that the owner just decided to shut down the restaurant because the only reason he started it was to provide his son a legacy from the family businesses in Italy, and he decided his son couldn't handle it. Thanks for listening.